Hi. Alright, so I'm looking at an article on thepsychreport.com called Coerced to Confess, The Psychology of False Confessions. And this is an article talking about the Central Park Five, and it's talking about why would someone falsely confess to a crime they didn't commit. I think it's pretty relevant here. The things that they're talking about have definitely happened. I'm just going to read some parts of this. Why did they confess to crimes they did not commit? Why did these confessions trump all other evidence in the case? Why did the judge, jury, and DA place so much emphasis on confessions, despite conflicting DNA and non-existent physical evidence? And most importantly, is it possible to prevent false confessions that can lead to such serious breakdowns of justice? They spoke with Saul Casson, psychology professor at John Bay College of Criminal Justice and Williams College, who has researched false confessions for over 30 years to find out more about the Central Park Five case, why people confess to crimes they did not commit, and how certain interrogation techniques can promote or limit the incidence of false confessions. This kind of goes along with the Reed technique. We're talking about how the detectives interrogate people when they're trying to get confessions, and this Reed technique has certain safeguards in place to keep you from, the guidelines to keep you from going over into territory where you might get a false confession instead of a real confession. In this case with Brendan, at least, where he quite obviously gave a false confession, a very coerced confession, because the training that these detectives had received from Reed was not followed, which is why they were able to get a false confession out of Brendan. And let's see, Saul Casson, he says, that is in some ways the ultimate question, because it is the most counterintuitive behavior, I think, that people can conceive of. Over the years, I have found that lay people have an easier time understanding why some people or someone would kill themselves. They understand suicide and the motivations for it than they do why someone would confess to a crime he didn't commit. Yeah, I think that's very true. It's hard for a jury to see, why would you ever say that you killed someone? Why would you ever say you did this thing that you didn't do? They just don't understand, because they probably have never been in that interrogation room with those highly trained detectives, being questioned hour after hour after hour, and being called liars, and just having all of this technique, I guess, that they're trained to use to get people to talk. A lot of people are not aware that the police are allowed to lie. They are allowed to lie to get you to talk. They're allowed to tell you that they have information that they don't have. They're allowed to tell you that they have evidence that they don't really have. They're allowed to lie and tell you whatever the hell they want, almost, just to see if they can get you to talk. And once they get you talking, then you're just going to keep talking, because they're not going to stop pushing. It says, the reason why people confess to crimes they did not commit is because they are subject to pressures of interrogation, a highly aggressive form of social influence. In the interrogation, especially in American interrogation, people can become so stressed and so broken down, and they start to feel so hopeless about their current situation, that they become They come to believe in a rational way a confession is in their best interest. In some cases, they get so confused by the fact that American police are permitted to lie about evidence, and I mean lie about DNA, prints, surveillance footage, polygraph results, that in some cases, people accused of crimes, particularly kids and others who are limited intellectually, become so confused by the lies that they actually come to believe that they have committed this crime they didn't commit. They wonder why it is they can't recall it. They are led to believe that it's possible for people to transgress without awareness, for people to do something terrible and repress it. So they develop basically an inference that they must have committed the crime. Yeah, I definitely see how this exact sort of thing happened to Brendan. You know, he is obviously limited intellectually, like they said, and extremely confused. He didn't understand the police were lying to him about evidence that they're saying that they had and that they could do that. I'm sure that, just like he says in this, that it is in his best interest to give a confession because he can see, I mean, he's not a complete idiot, you know, he can see that, well, if I tell them what they want to hear, then I'll get to go home. I mean, they're also lying to him and leading him on into believing that they're there to help him, and they can help him if he tells them things that they want to hear. So it's kind of like, you give us what we want and we will give you what you want, which is to go home. You want to leave? You want to get out of here? Tell us what we want to hear and we'll stop pressuring you. So, you know, eventually after being pushed and questioned repeatedly, eventually he's going to start caving in. Brendan's case, I think he started caving pretty quickly into the suggestibility and all of the little seeds they planted with him, that he just gave into it. And I wish that more people understood that these techniques that Reed trains them to use are great for getting someone who is trying to lie that are actually guilty. It is very good to use this tool as, you know, part of their interrogation to figure out when someone is withholding information that they have or lying to them or not being honest. But if you abuse it, you're just asking for a false confession. Especially when you go cross that line with someone who is a minor or intellectually challenged in some way, you just should not violate that. And if you are going to use this Reed technique with a minor or someone who is intellectually disadvantaged in some way, you have certain limitations that you're not supposed to go through. Like, you're not supposed to lie to them. You're not supposed to promise them leniency. You're not supposed to do these things because they can't challenge that. They don't have the mental capacity, I guess, to argue that or interpret that as it is. They will believe what you are telling them, and that should not be abused. You're abusing your power and your training against someone who is unarmed, and that's not right. And, you know, anyway, basically the whole thing with Brendan, and I just wish that more people understood, because I've heard this a lot of times from people who are very convinced that Stephen and Brendan are guilty, that they did this because of all of the nonsense that they heard on the media from Kratz telling that ridiculous story that turned out not to ever be used at either trial because it was so ridiculous and impossible. People just made up their minds that Stephen and Brendan are guilty because Brendan confessed. That is the biggest hurdle that these people have to getting over the possibility that it's not true that Brendan and Stephen are not guilty. And I think if more people could understand how it is possible to happen, how often it happens, especially in this type of case, with someone like Brendan, it might help to at least open someone's mind to accept that it is possible that these two guys are innocent, that they're not guilty, at least. Just get over that confession, because when you've got information, hey, there's a confession, yeah, that sounds pretty bad. When you hear the details of this confession, it sounds really bad. But if you go into it deeper and you look into how they got that confession, the whole process that led up to this final tweaked version of a confession, it's absolute shit, and you should not consider this as being accurate in any way at all. And that's what I keep encouraging people who are pro Stephen and Brendan are guilty, they're guilty. I encourage them the most to just go back and watch all of these interrogations with Brendan, and watch how much information is actually fed to him and how much he offers on his own, because there isn't any. He just doesn't. They give him everything. They give him all the evidence they have. They give him all the information he needs to give this confession. They don't like this one little part of it. They change it to fit their evidence, and that's what they did all along. They're tweaking this confession that turns out to be something that could have happened, and if you compare it with the actual evidence, it couldn't have happened. I have no doubt that a lot of the people involved in getting this confession and in this conviction had no idea, never thought for a million years that the whole world would be looking at this, and the whole world would be questioning how they got this confession and how they got these convictions. I'm very thankful for the documentary to at least open this up to so many people to look at, because unfortunately I really feel like Stephen and Brendan might have been just forgotten. And if it wasn't for the great attorneys that they have now, they might not even have a chance. But with the great attorneys that they have now and all the people around the world who are supporting them and believe in them, now, thank God, hopefully they'll at least have a chance to get this whole thing cleared up. And when they're released finally, because they will be, I hope that they're not treated so poorly like Stephen was when he was released after the rape, after he was exonerated from the rape, because that is just it's so unfair. There's so many people who have falsely confessed to crimes, who have been coerced, and this Reed method has been abused and misused to get confessions so that there can be a conviction. I hope that there are better safeguards put into place, someone is keeping an eye on this sort of thing, that this isn't allowed. The first sign of a violation of this training to where it's been abused to get a confession, just throw it out. The confession is worthless if it's gotten in a way such as that, where it's not reliable. Anyway, please do your own research. don't just listen to media. Don't read nonsense stories. Look into this stuff yourself. Read all the transcripts. Read the articles that that give you real information. Read all the court documents. There's tons of them. I've been reading this stuff for over a month now, and I'm not even close to being through it all because there's just so much, and I am overloaded with my one brain with all this information that the public didn't have available to them. The jury absolutely did not have available to them. So, please, especially if you are, a Manitowoc resident, please take the time to read this, look into this stuff yourself. Don't just believe what you've heard. It is not disrespectful to Teresa at all to watch the documentary or to look into this yourself, because most of us who believe in Stephen and Brendan's innocence are also very, very, very interested in getting justice for Teresa as well, because her real killer is out there still, and that should scare the shit out of you. It should. Because of the way that this is handled, her killer has been free for the last 10 years. She has not had justice, and I think that should offend you more than anything. Whether you believe in Stephen and Brendan or not, you should want the answers to, is this her real killer? Is her real killer paying for it now? If you look into it yourself, you're going to find probably the same exact thing that most of us have that have taken the time to do this. No, and please do that. Please look into it and, tell me what you think. Because the information is out there. Just go find it. Read it. If you don't know how to find it, how to read it, message me on my videos. I will answer all your questions. I'll tell you where to find everything. StephenAveryCase.org has tons of information. Reddit has links to tons of information. Like I said, anything you want access to, ask me. I can tell you how to get it. I can tell you where to get it. I'll put links to StephenAveryCase.org in the description also. And hopefully that will help, where you can read so much stuff. Please do. Thank you for watching.